Today, I'll share a little bit of knowledge about how to make your mind sharper, especially in the morning when it counts and when you want to do your best work for the day. If you're anything like me, your priorities are to learn and become more of an intellectual person, as well as train hard at whatever sport or type of training that you do. Because of that, you need your body to perform in both domains. We'll specifically be talking about how carbohydrates can affect your diet and how having that macronutrient at different times during the day can affect your ability to concentrate or also affect your ability to perform at a high level in training. First of all, you clicking on this video means that you want to learn and improve your knowledge and understanding about the things that you're passionate about. This is really great, and I hope you keep doing this because it's a very powerful trait and ambition to have. You could be watching entertainment on YouTube or any other platform, but you're choosing to watch an educational video like this one. Keep walking this path and you'll be way ahead of your peers in due time. All right, let's get straight into it. When I eat a lot of carbs in the morning through foods like bread, cereals, and sugary juice and whatnot, I'll end up becoming tired and I'll lose concentration as the morning passes. And so what I do now is I try and have as little carbs as possible in the morning if I'm trying to do work that requires a lot of concentration and mental effort. This is especially important if you're not going to exercise in the morning, because there's no really good use of those carbs anyways. So instead, I'll try and eat things like nuts, and I might have a coffee to improve my awakeness. And now I don't really get as tired and I can do good work in the morning when it counts. But before I go to the gym, of course, I will eat carbs through things like honey, rice, potatoes, and other starchy foods, so that I have the energy to push weight when I go to the gym. Before we get into this video, I'll give you a little bit of perspective. Different foods are like different tools for performance, both in the mental and the physical space. Certain types of foods have more carbs, whilst others have more protein and fats. And depending on the food, I believe that you'll be able to perform better at certain things. For example, carb-based foods like your breads and your grains will help you push hard during physical activity and training, and more protein and fat heavy foods like your meats and dairy will help you concentrate better during mental tasks. If your current thinking is that carbs or whatever you eat doesn't affect your ability to do meaningful work, then I'll ask you this question. How would you know if these types of foods don't affect your ability to concentrate or do good work or perform better at training if you've never tried anything else? You've had a certain amount of food, a certain selection of food your whole life and never really experimented with it. And how would you know if experimenting with it wouldn't change your ability or wouldn't improve your abilities to do better? To start, we'll go through the first question, which is what are carbohydrates? And so carbohydrates are one of the three macronutrients which our body uses. And the reason why it's called macronutrients is because macro means big. And so the three things that our body needs the most are called the macronutrients, which is fats, proteins, and carbs. So carbs is the one we're talking about today. When we eat foods with carbs, these mostly come through foods like corn, rice, potatoes, pasta, dairy, so in a way, sugary foods and drinks like fruit juice and soft drinks. And from fast food, definitely they have a lot of carbs. There's also this concept of GI, which stands for glycemic index. And this is basically how quickly your body will convert the carbs that you eat into glucose. Low GI means that it will take longer for your body to convert that carb that you eat into your body, into glucose. And high GI is the opposite, where it will convert really quickly. So usually people say that low GI foods are better. And the reason why low GI foods are better is because they are less processed. So your body needs to work to break that food down and it will release the glucose into your body at a slower rate than high GI foods, which will bounce your blood sugar up and down, which is not very good for your pancreas or your insulin production. That's something we'll get to later. Right, we'll draw a graph to understand this a little bit better. For low GI foods, you'll kind of have something like a little bit of a rise and then a lower fall. But if you eat processed foods, and these are foods like fast foods, sugary drinks, candy, and even rice, your body will be able to convert that stuff to glucose a lot faster than unprocessed foods, because your body won't need to work to break that stuff down, because in the process of making those foods, the machines already did the work by grinding it up and kind of forming it into other things. High GI. And so when you eat these foods, you get a quick boost of glucose in your system, which is good in the short term. It'll make you more alert and have more energy. So that's around under the hour. But after that time, you'll crash pretty hard and then your brain won't work properly. What that looks like on a graph, this is when you eat and it'll rise really high and then drop. So then this big dip is what you'll experience. And that's what some people might call the sugar crash. Moving on, we can get to the next part, which is when can carbohydrates or carbs actually help you and how are they used in the body? So it can get pretty complex, but the simple explanation of how we use carbs is as an energy source for the body. Carbs get turned into glucose and absorbed into the blood, and then your muscles use that glucose to do work and move your body. And because of this, carbs, the more you have to a certain point, will help you train with more intensity and effort, because your muscles will have more energy to respond to what your brain wants it to do. And so that is why you'll see endurance athletes do this thing called carb loading, because when you have more carbohydrates stored as glucose in your muscles, you can do work for longer before you get fatigued. So here's the process of what happens when you have carbs. So you eat carbs through foods and drinks, and your body will convert the energy from foods and drinks into glucose. And then the glucose gets pushed in your blood, and that raises your blood sugar to a degree of how much you ate. And then your body will produce this thing called insulin to attach to the glucose and then push it to the muscles so it can be used. Of course, in my research, I did look through some scientific journal articles and some studies that did experiments to understand how do carbs affect cognitive performance, so how well you're able to concentrate and focus. Most of them were conducted with humans as the test subjects and some with rats. All of them were conducted to test cognitive ability regarding memory, learning, mood, and other things. Through reading a lot of them, I've come to understand a few important conclusions. Low GI carbohydrates improved cognitive performance, especially memory when tested on it later in the morning. For example, one of the papers, there was a group of people which were fed high GI foods, which is sugary and fast absorbing into the blood, versus low GI foods, which takes longer to absorb. And they found that the low GI group, experiment group, could memorize more words 3 hours later. So how might that affect you is that, say you go to school or you go to uni and 3 hours later you have like a test in the morning. From this information, you definitely could consider having less or low GI carbs in the morning, and that'll definitely help you improve later on. More studies that I've read mention similar things to low GI and even high protein meals, but the overall focus lies on the low GI or less carbs type of thing, which is called keto. One thing I couldn't find is like a fasted state on cognitive ability versus like low GI. I think that would be interesting to see, because I think when you don't have any carbohydrates in your body at all, your body just focuses really hard. That's something I've tried to do in the morning, because I try and have just coffee and like black coffee and nuts, and that's very low carb. Like I think that's like less than 10, and it definitely helps me to concentrate a lot better. Getting to the third point, we now talk about how can eating carbs affect you in your lifestyle and affect your priorities as well. From what I understand, your muscles will only use the glucose from the carbs if it's paired with insulin, as we've explained before. So if you have simple carbs which gets converted into glucose quickly, you won't be able to make insulin fast enough to absorb all that glucose into the muscles. And because of that, more glucose will be in your blood than the glucose that's ready to use in your muscles, which is also why your blood sugar will spike, because there's so much glucose in your blood for a little amount of time that your pancreas, which produces insulin, doesn't produce enough of it to keep it stable, so it just spikes. The extreme end of this is called hypoglycemia, which is something that people with diabetes, they get that. And a blood sugar spike is kind of like the short-term version of that. This will affect your ability to think clearly and concentrate on important things after that initial spike. To put it into perspective, if you're better able to concentrate and focus on a task, the less time you'll spend on it because you'll naturally just do it faster, which means that you can do more things with less time. So for example, if I were to think of myself back in the day, or even myself now at university, if I've got an assignment that I need to hand in and it takes me, say, 5 hours to complete it, if I have less carbs and am able to concentrate more, that means I could potentially complete that same assignment in just, say, 3 hours. And with that extra 2 hours, I can do other things like go to the gym earlier, which means I can sleep earlier, which means I get more recovery and I can train harder the next day. So it's just these little things that you can kind of reap the rewards from. And even for you as well, if say you're going to school and you need to do some homework in the afternoon, if you can complete that homework an hour earlier, you can go to sleep an hour earlier and wake up feeling more refreshed, more recovered, and train harder in the morning. So it's just these little things that you can kind of think of where this type of decision making around food can affect you. Over weeks and months, an hour here and an hour there will add up, and you'll notice that you've slept better, done more things, or just felt mentally sharper and more intellectual than before. So our last point is a summary of how you can improve your cognitive and athletic functions of your body by strategically consuming carbs. Improving your ability to think and do mental work is really important, whether you're in school or doing other forms of learning, which require you to focus and concentrate a lot over a while. I find through my own experiences that when and what carbs to eat is something that is very important to understand and manage properly, because it can affect your brain and ability to do good work. What I try and do is avoid having bread, sugar, and high carb foods in the morning, because that is when I'll be doing most of my hard thinking and hard mental work for the day. And then after that, when I am leading up to an exercise kind of block during my day, I'll eat a little bit more carb heavy foods to get that glucose into my muscles and make sure I'm prepared to push hard during those active times during the day. You could use a similar strategy where you limit the carbs that you eat when you're not about to train and when you want to do some thinking and concentration. And then you can start loading on the carbs after you finish that block of mental work and you want to start doing training soon. That way your brain will work better when you want it to, and then your body will work better when you want it to, instead of just being in that weird medium between. So we come to our actionable steps for the video. And so number one is to track your calories, because this will let you understand how much carbs you're eating in a day, and this will give you a baseline understanding of what's going on in your body. Number two is to try and keep a mental note of how you feel after consuming a lot of carbs. For example, if you have white bread, note how you feel after, and then eat something that's not high in carbs, and then try and see if there's a difference between that. Understand that you might feel normal, but if you think about it, if you've always eaten a lot of carbs and went straight to work, you wouldn't know the difference between a sharp mind and a slow mind, because you would have always had that mind fog to begin with. Third point is to eat less from high GI foods when you need to focus and use your brain. And fourth is to instead eat the low GI carbs before training. This will help you release the energy slower and in a more controlled way so that your body can utilize it better, and it's kind of less stressing on your pancreas to produce all that insulin to lower the blood sugar. And lastly, if you're going to school or doing the most important mental work for the day in the morning, or at any time of the day in general, don't eat carbs before doing that. Try and see how it goes over 1 week, and I'm sure you'll notice the difference. Give it a go. The worst that can happen is you feel nothing. Alright, so we're at the end of this video for today. So remember to always stay curious and be open to learning new things, because that's the only way you go forward in life. You do new things and figure out what's good for you and figure out what's not good for you.